All right, we are live now. So, for tonight's Apostate interview, I am talking to the frustrated atheists. And actually, before I let you get into anything, congratulations are in order. You just got married, man.
I did. I did indeed.
All right, so how's that going?
Oh, it's always great to be married to your best friend. And so I indeed married my best friend, and now we are just getting trying to transition back into work life from being on the honeymoon and being on vacation for like 2 weeks. So we're just kind of transitioning back into all that, and that's always fun because you're like, I really don't want to go to work, but my bank account says you better get your ass back
That
to work.
sounds about right.
So you know,
Yeah. So,
mm.
other than the recent nuptials, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, right now I'm at work, and apparently this place is at a shooting range, and you're gonna hear a lot of popping in the background. So I just want to pre-warn you about that because I just had somebody come up and park right next to me so that way they could fire off guns. Um, because this is Texas after all, and we do enjoy our guns. But yeah, well, I am the frustrated atheist, and I have a YouTube channel, and I do the things with the other things and the people sometimes. I know it's a quite shocking to some people because
Yeah.
they're like, "You have not made videos in forever. When are you going to do that?" And I say, "Mind your business." No, but seriously, I am in the process of actually uh, working on doing my whatchamacallit, the oh god, I'm such a professional. I know all the words. The I'm working on my a collab with uh oh god, what is the hell is his name now? Secular. Um
Nice.
yeah, we I'm actually in the process, not obviously right this very second, but I'm in the process of recording some bits and pieces for our collab, and then after that I've got other videos that I'm going to start doing again. But yeah,
Very
that's
nice.
me. Yeah.
And judging by your name, I guess you do like frustrated rants.
Mm, no, I don't do frustrating rants. I've done a few interviews where people ask me what's with the frustrated part, or why you so frustrated and things like that. And well, it's mainly due to the fact that I decided because I got whenever way before I'd started YouTube and I ever even decided that I wanted to be on YouTube, I decided that I wanted to start a Facebook group and pretty much have everyone who got tired of answering the same questions to theists. I wanted them to just tag me instead, so that way I can just start answering the questions and these frustrating questions that they always answer. And so I decided to do that, but well, I was not getting any traction because, well, I did not promote it whatsoever. So that was a big thing. Um, and also, I just didn't really do much with it because, well, Facebook sucks and I'm not
Oh
a
yeah.
big fan of it. I very rarely get on Facebook nowadays. I get on there every now and then to see, oh, I have 20 plus uh, notifications. Let me go ahead and clear those out real quick and then get back on with the rest of my life. But I do intend to I do tend to get on there from time to time and see, and because I have the because it tells me, oh, you've got one new review. I'm like, oh, well, let me go look at this. And it shows me absolutely fucking nothing. And I'm like, well, thanks for showing me this. I'm so excited that you did that, I guess. But it wasn't until I actually got to be in security work that I decided that maybe I will go and do the videos, because the way it started off was I did research into, because I like fossils. I did research into the fossil record and whatnot, and then I kept seeing videos of Nebraska Man, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. Are you?
Never heard of them.
Oh well, Nebraska Man was a they so it was a tooth that was found in Nebraska that they thought that some people said could belong to an advanced ape-like ancestor, or just an ape-like creature. And then pretty much an illustration tabloid ran with it, and the guy even said that he drew inspiration from Java Man, and he created this Nebraska Man character. And then later they found out that it was actually belonged to a peccary, which is a pig. And creationists tend to trump this around like this is some big thing against evolution. Oh, look, they were so wrong about this. Ha 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 ha. And I didn't see very much coverage of it in detail that I wanted to see. And so I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. And then it wasn't until after that I came across Tony Reed, who I think he had a more detailed explanation. But I was like, well, I didn't know about him until now, so I guess I'll just let that slide. So I just ended up doing a bunch of others of the hoaxes that they were talking about. I never did do anything about giants, which I should have, because they're always like, oh yeah, look at this photo. It has a giant skull and a giant body, and yada yada yada. Not realizing that those were all photoshopped.
Oh yeah.
And then it just kind of went from there. I started doing debunks and started to do other different little things, and now I have a couple of different series that I'm working on in my head and trying to get back into the motivation of wanting to do videos. But since I started doing the part of the collab that I've been doing with Secular, I kind of got that mojo back coming a little bit. So I'm going to continue to do that real quick before starting anything else. So that way I can just be like, all right, now I'm back in the swing of things, type of thing.
Right on, man. I don't suppose I could get you to divulge the series you're considering about doing here, could I?
Oh, well, I do have one that I've already started, which is Science for the Newly Deconverted. And I'm taking the different fields of science for anyone who's just now going from a theist to an atheist point of view, who don't already know the science behind evolution, abiogenesis, the way planets are formed, and all different things like that. Even the Big Bang Theory, and having a series where I kind of do a brief overview of the science of it all, and on top of that, give them multiple sources for both reading and YouTube videos for them to watch, so that way they can help get themselves familiar with some of this stuff. And so that way they're not kind of thrown off guard whenever they sit there and finally tell a theist that they're an atheist, and the theist is like, oh, well, how do you explain this? Explain this, huh? How do you do that? Just gives them some, it's like, well, here's information. So that way you can know how all this stuff works if you ever need to know or ever care to know. And then after that, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I just kind of play it off by whatever really pops in my head.
All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of what I do anyway. So.
Right.
Well, but yeah, thanks for telling us about that, man. So why don't we get into your deconversion a little bit? Could you start off by telling us what religion you used to practice prior to leaving?
Yes, I was Southern Baptist. I was the closest you could get to being fundamentalist. Without being fundamentalist, we went to church every Wednesday and Sundays. And when you went Sundays, you were in your Sunday best. There was no women preachers or anything like that. You sang from the hymns, and that was about it, unless you went to the youth area where they did do some kind of not hymnals, but still religious type songs. And we just kind of I was there for, I pretty much grew up going to church every Wednesday and Sundays. And yeah, I probably went to this one particular church I went there for quite a bit, and then something happened and the pastor left, and shortly after that we stopped going there. It wasn't until later I found out exactly what happened with the pastor. And pretty much he ended up having an affair on his wife with a secretary of the church who had previously killed her husband in self-defense. So it was a very big thing in our small community, and the general public didn't get to really know much about that until later on, whenever it was at the point in time. I'm sure the adults knew, but as far as his kids knew, all he was doing was he decided to go to a different church. He wasn't going to be at that church anymore. And so we were like, oh, okay. And then it wasn't until later on where people started telling us, oh, yeah, no, this is what happened. And it was like, oh, well, that's great. Yeah. And then I went to a Pentecostal church for a little bit. And just kind of went to different churches here and there. But nothing really fancied me at the time because, well, I was busy working normally and doing all sorts of other stuff, but still Christian. I didn't actually fully deconvert until I was about 24, 25. So only a few years back. Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely took you less time to become an atheist activist on here than me.
Yes, yeah, that definitely, but that was still something I was still iffy about for a while. I wanted to kind of do an atheist YouTube channel, And so I did end up making the account, and I had the account for a good couple of years, I want to say, before I finally, maybe not even a couple of years, it was probably close to around a year before I finally ever did anything, um, as far as content wise, or I don't know. I've had it for, I don't remember when I started the account. It might have been even earlier this year. It's just so much has happened that I have no idea exactly how long I've had it, but I would sit there and watch all the atheist content on my channel name, and just kind of sit there and watch things and see how people did things, and just like, well, let me dabble in it for a second myself. So yeah.
Hmm. All right.
And then I decided that whenever finally I started doing videos, and then I started doing debunks and whatnot. Whenever I did the debunks, it was mainly to have more content, but also I saw a video of a gentleman from over in the Middle East, where he made atheistic content on his channel, and uh, so he ended up going what was the what it, he ends up getting found out that he's making atheist content, and so the police are actively looking for him, and then so he's having to every few days change his location, because if he stays in one place for too long, people recognize him. And since he's in the Middle East, he's in a country where if your own family, because his own family even said that they would turn him in if if the cops were after him, type of thing. And
Now,
so
is this Rafe Badawi? Because that's
no,
no, it's a different
no, it's not him.
person.
It's a different person.
Okay.
But I did hear about him later on, and but he so he had to but he ends up finally doing, he did this for quite a few years, and he was on the run quite often, and finally he decided that there was too much hostility, that he was going to go to like Morocco or something like that, where they really don't give a shit what your religion is. And so he ends up getting on a flight from where he was to Egypt, where he gets stopped and detained for a bit. And he sat there, and he was on Twitter and everything. Um, that's what he did a lot too, was Twitter. And he finally tweeted out this one message, said, um, "I was supposed to be on a flight to Morocco. That was an hour ago." He's like, "I'm about to start deleting all of my social media from my phone, because if they did catch him with knowing and saw that he was an atheist, that he would be imprisoned for being atheist, pretty much, because they consider it to be hateful and all this other nonsense." What he was doing is they classified as hate speech, and it was very hateful for you to do that, and they would throw you in jail without trying to make it seem as bad as it sounds. But they were going to throw him in jail for apostasy. And so he ends up going to jail, but the Freedom from Religion Foundation, I think it was either them or it was the Atheist Republic, got a hold of some lawyers and actually got him out.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
yeah, and so it was. I didn't get to. I don't remember what else happened. But he is. But it was great that they were there to help him. And it just really got me thinking. I was like, damn. I was like, here I am squandering, my voice for other people around for other people who cannot use their voice, because there are some atheists who are still in the Middle East who cannot openly say they are atheists, and they will have to keep going to, to their temple, and they have to keep, doing the prayers, and they have to continue pretending as if they are believers in Allah, because if not, it's either imprisonment, lashes, or death in some cases. And so I decided I was going to use my voice for those who couldn't use theirs. Because we even have that here in the United States. It's not as severe, but those who are in certain families, if you were to tell that your family that you are an atheist, these families would kick you out immediately. And so I was like, it, why should I squander this right whenever others can't do it?
That's a pretty good point, actually. Um, I think I know who you're talking about. I know the story at least, but I can't remember the name either.
Yeah, I really can't
Yeah.
remember the name. It just, for some reason, his name strikes me. But like I said, it wasn't too long after that I heard about Raif, and his story is even worse because of the fact that he was an open atheist, or he was openly speaking out against the against Islam. That he then gets lashes and is imprisoned until his lashes are completely up, and then I think he still will have jail time after that, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and that's I was like, the hell is this? It just was like it really aggravates me that we have a world that is a thing, even though it's not in our section of the world. It's still aggravating that that is a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good thing at all for religious liberty to, have anywhere in the world where your right to believe or not is suppressed. But speaking of non-belief, why don't we get into how you started to doubt and then ultimately left?
Whew, that story is a lot bit longer than just, I stopped believing a few years ago. That goes back as far as whenever I was a child. Um, the I've had several different cracks in my faith, if you will. Um, and one of them being probably around 11-ish, because I'm definitely not like Powell, and I was an atheist at 7 type of thing. No, I was a firm believer in my family's religion, because everyone else believed this, so I did too. And I then, once I got to be 11, I had my first kind of crack. Maybe I might have been 12. But I was reading the Harry Potter series, and I absolutely loved it, and it broadened my imagination far beyond what it used to be. And I just could not stop reading. And my aunt, who was homeschooling us at the time, she actually she told she was we were homeschooled, and in Texas the way the homeschooling system works is you can be homeschooled, but every year at the end of the year you have to go up to Austin, I think it was, and take a
Hmm.
test. Now This test was to make sure that you were where you needed to be as far as education wise. Um, so we had again, I don't know if that's how it is now. It was whenever I was a child, but so we would go and take these tests, and if we were where we were supposed to be, we were good to go, type of thing. And I guess if the kids weren't where they needed to be, they had to be taught what it was that they were lacking.
Nice.
Is what I assume. I don't know. Because most of my scoring was what's known as post high score, which basically meant that someone straight out of high school, uh, or even further, or even had been out of high school for a while and took the test, couldn't score higher than I did. And so I don't know exactly what would happen if you didn't score where you needed to be scoring at. But we would go to these and take these tests. But so we were being taught what we needed to, but she would also incorporate kind of a Bible study type of moment time period at the very
Mhm.
beginning of school, and she picks this one day that I have the Harry Potter book on my desk to tell us how witchcraft is bad and how everyone who practices it and whatnot is going to hell, and the fact that if you were to even read the Harry Potter books, you're pretty much destined for hell, type of thing. And I I was like, what? Because at this time I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This, why would something that was so good that broadened my imagination and got me to want to read, why would that send me to hell? And then once you but I sat there and was like, you know what, no, I could still read these books and I'd still go to heaven. That'd be great. That's still okay. And so I did. I would keep reading the books and still was like, I'm gonna go to heaven. Fast forward a few more years, and uh, I'm talking with my uncle outside my grandparents' house, and we got on the subject of the Bible, where he was telling me how the Bible was written in one language and then gets translated and translated and translated as it moves on to other areas, and gets spread further out and over vast amounts of time. And he goes, not all of it is going to be accurate. And I was like, what do you mean? And so he said, okay. He's like, take this for instance. He goes, he talked about a relative of ours who decided that they were going to write their own translation of the Bible. And as we all know, there's the line, it's easier to fit a camel through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. Well,
Mhm.
he took that to mean, like, back then, the entrance into the city was in the shape of an eye of a needle, and so this was known as the eye of the city. And a camel with a full pack on couldn't fit through that archway, so you had to downstack the pack and then get the camel through, and then bring the stuff in as well. And so that's what he took it to mean, that you couldn't, it's easier to fit a camel with a full pack on through the entrance into a city than it is for, a rich man to get to heaven. And so he goes, these little translations that go from different areas, and it shows that this is in no way, shape, or form accurate. And I sat there and was thinking, I was like, that sounds awfully right, but I just pushed it away out of the side of my head, and I didn't care. Um, Fast forwarded to my senior year of high school, and um, I am always in conversation with this friend of mine who I don't know whether or not he believed. That's not something I ever asked him. but we would get into religious debates. And I don't know if he was just playing devil's advocate or if he truly was a non-believer, but we would always chit chat about this, and he did it because he liked to get me riled up, and I would get riled up because I'm a good Christian boy, and so I'm not gonna have him you know disrespect the Bible and and God and whatnot, um, and so but other than that, he was a good kid. He really was one of those friends that he always asked for money, but guarantee you, if you needed the shirt off his back, he'd give it to you. He would do whatever he needed to make sure that you know were helped. And so he was a great kid. He was a great guy. And one day I go to the mall, and from a mutual friend of ours, found out that uh, while he was walking home from school with his girlfriend, um, he was killed because another student, her friends pulled a prank on her and threw a stop sign, pole and all, in the back of her truck. And she went to go take it to the police station to say, hey, look, I didn't have anything to do with this. My friends did this as a prank. Here you go. And it was hanging off the side of her of the bed, and it just, as she was driving past them, the sign was at his neck level and almost decapitated him.
Oh, Jesus.
He was dead before Lifelike got there. And so he so I couldn't process any of that at first. At first I was like, no, it's somebody else. It's not who I think it is. No, that this isn't how this is happening. But it wasn't until I got to his memorial service that following Monday that I realized it was him. And I was thinking, this was a great guy. He was a good kid. Why would God do this? This isn't, to make matters worse. I talked to his girlfriend, and she told me that who was walking with him when it happened, and she said the last thing that they were talking about were her grades and how she needed to get them up. And so it was like, why would God do this? Why would God take this, good guy out of the world? And so I was angry for a bit, but I sat there and it didn't really shake my belief in God. I definitely stopped. I wasn't going to church by now. I'd stopped a long time ago, but I'd still go off and on to the Pentecostal church that I went to for a little while. And I was just like, I don't. After that, after the Pentecostal church, I just was like, I'm tired of churches right now. I still have a belief, but I just don't feel like I need to go to church. And so I really, I really didn't. It really shook my faith for a while. But I sat there and said, no, I still believe in God. And so fast forwarded later on, I'm in the army. I was with this is my ex-wife now, but at the time, my wife, and she was telling me all these different things about what happened with one of her exes and the physical abuse she was being put through. And so, um, she goes to tell her church that she was going to at the time, what was happening, and that she was leaving him. And they were trying to say that she doesn't need to leave him, that they need to talk things out. When this man was a complete and utter psychopath and had literally, whenever he went to jail and she went to go visit him, sat there and he told her that he could have taken her life right then and there. And he's like, do you know how much I would have enjoyed it? This man was a complete and utter psycho. And the church is trying to tell her, oh, that's okay. You could still work things out with him. And then I think she was still going to the church whenever she had her youngest, and her husband at the time ends up molesting her daughter and going to prison for it. And the church sits there and says, oh, that's okay. Y'all can still talk this out. It's like, no.
No, you
What?
can't.
No, you can't. There's nothing to talk about. And it was all because at this time now, it was the fact that they did not believe in divorce. And so it was one of those things where, it was religious, the religious saying, you can't get a divorce because we're against it. You need to figure things out with your husband. And it's like, what? No, this does not make any sense whatsoever. And as I keep hearing these stories about the church, it really keeps my division uh, between myself and church, because it's like, how could anyone be okay with that? And so I really didn't care about the church, and by now I'm starting to really lose faith in God, because I keep seeing these different things all throughout, and I still have a faith in God, but it's slowly deteriorating, because I'm seeing all these bad things, and I mean, I see good things too in life at the time, but I was really seeing all these bad things, and most of it had to do with church going individuals. Um, still pedophile Catholic priests were still a thing. All these different church goers doing these things were still a thing. And so it was like, no, I just really couldn't. My faith was being really shaken now. Um, it was close to shattering by this point. But the final straw that finally made me realize that I was an atheist was, um, after me and her split up, and eventually we got divorced. But I come home back to Texas, and I meet. I stay with my mom, but I'm constantly going over to my dad's until eventually I just started staying over at my dad's to help take care of my grandfather. But my sister and brother-in-law are staying over there as well. And my brother-in-law was an atheist, and he sat there. Of course, it was telling me about when he decided, whenever he figured out that he was an atheist, and he was telling me all these different, things like that. And he eventually he had me watch the movie Zeitgeist, and anybody nowadays knows that that's a terrible, terrible film. Um, it's just awful. But he um, he tried to get me to watch the Zeitgeist movie, and so eventually I ended up watching it. But I sat there and really started looking at what I believe. And finally, I sat there and decided that I am an atheist. And it was like a burden had been lifted, because I then realized that all the bad shit that had happened throughout life is just life happening. There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing part of God's plan or His will, or or Satan over here doing the bad, evil, heebie-jeebie stuff. It was just life, and you just take it as it comes. And it was kind of a calming experience. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is pretty great. This is this definitely is, you know, I after that I just couldn't go back. I really, and even now I couldn't. I've always heard, and even back then I had a moment whenever I realized I didn't believe anymore, where I could have continued on with a fake belief and fooled myself and others, or I could have, been honest with myself and realized that I'm an atheist. And at that point in time, there was no turning back. I couldn't force myself to pretend like I believed in any of the bullshit anymore. It just was a great experience to realize that you're an atheist, because when you realize that there's no ultimate plan, that all this bad shit is not happening because somebody's ordaining it. It just life. It makes you really, really calm. Well, it made me calm, at least. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, so pretty much just little kind of cracks started appearing in your belief, and eventually, like how much, like, did you do too much research, when this was all happening, trying to justify your belief? Or
No, as a matter of fact, because I felt like, I took the whole, I guess subconsciously, I took the whole entire role of ignorance as bliss. I took that a little too, I took that a little too literal. I was like, you know, wow. I was like, I'm not going to look into any of this, because if I look too much into the Bible itself, and I probably would have become, this is my mind frame probably at the time, but if I look too much into the Bible, or really went hardcore into the religion, I would have been. I don't know what would have happened at the time, but I realized that if I looked against it, then I would lose everything. And because I grew up Baptist, Southern Baptist at that, it was a scary thing, because those who did not believe went to hell. And I remember as a child having dreams of for some reason, being up at the pearly gates with my mom, and because of the way my mom lived her life, watching her as she plummets to hell to be burned for eternity, it scared the living shit out of me.
Mhm.
And so it was like, I don't want that to happen to me. So it was an ignorance is bliss. I'm not going to think about it, because if I think too much about it, then I could go to hell and burn for all of eternity. And I was not going to let that happen. Uh, Even if there was parts of me sometimes that thought that even if there was no God, there was going to be a hell for some reason. Because of this, because they really drilled this fear of hell into you, that it really does affect your everyday life. So much that you could not believe in God or heaven, but you will still believe in hell and the eternal suffering. So I was just like, no, that I'm not going to think about this whatsoever.
Hmm. Well, I'm definitely not going to argue against the religion closes off intellectual discovery,
Oh yeah,
because it literally did with you.
yeah. It literally did. I did not look into anything because as growing up in the religion, other than the fact of fear of hell, also I didn't look at anything else because what was the point? Because God did it all. I didn't look into, biology too much because what's the point? This is all God's creation and God did everything. And so I really was closed off to any kind of intellectual, you know, anything because it was, nope, God did it. And when you
Hmm.
have that mindset, you really do become ignorant and arrogant at the same time. And it is, I'm almost okay with arrogance if you can back the shit up. Like for
No.
instance, I don't ever whenever I hear Gordon Ramsay talk and him calling people idiots whenever it comes to cooking, I know it's because he knows what the fuck he's talking about and he can back the shit up. So if he did that to me, I wouldn't ever, be angry at it because I know he knows what the fuck he's talking about. And so arrogance to me can be okay if you can back it up with
Hmm.
knowledge or, whatever. But whenever you are ignorant and arrogant, it's really, really frustrating because you sit there and, nope, God did it. Nope, God did it. It's like, no, we actually have evidence that shows this and whatnot. It's like, well, nope, God did it. And you really get nowhere with these people who sit there and can only repeat that one line. Oh, God, God, God. It's like, no, look, there are other explanations, and these explanations are a lot better than God. Nope, God. It
Hmm.
gets you absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it really does annoy me too, the intellectual laziness. God did it. Well, I actually looked this up so I would get the name right, but Pierre Simon Laplace once said I had no need for that hypothesis when talking about, how the solar system worked, gravity on larger scales with larger bodies.
Yeah.
You know, they, I when it comes to literally anything, I have no need of the God hypothesis,
Hmm.
because there is almost definitely going to be a naturalistic explanation for everything. Whether we can know what that natural explanation is
Hmm.
in my lifetime is irrelevant, because eventually one will certainly be found.
And the thing is in my honest opinion, any kind of explanation or of how things happen before, like for instance, when it comes to say the Big Bang,
Mhm.
whatever happened before the Big Bang is irrelevant to the fact that the Big Bang happened. And so we could have spent an eternity in that state of a hot, dense space that was no bigger than a period, or there could have been a god behind it. Regardless, to me, it's irrelevant because to the fact that it did happen. We can
Mhm.
only go off of what we know, and what we know is that it happened. Now, if there is a way to figure out how it happened or what caused it to happen, then great, awesome. But I'm not going to waste my time because if even if we sat there and said that the Big Bang was the beginning of time, whatever happens before time, space, and matter is irrelevant, in my opinion. Of course, I know there's people who dedicate their life to figuring these questions out, But in my own opinion, to me, whatever happened before time, space, and matter is irrelevant, because the fact is that it happened, and we have to deal with the fact that it happened first before you can even go on to the fact that, to try to speculate what happened beforehand. And too many people are not even paying attention to the fact that the Big Bang happened. They say, nope, God created everything, yada, 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 and this is how, because, he was before all this. It's like, no, you have to understand that the Big Bang happened regardless if you don't want to believe it or not. Once you acknowledge that this had indeed happened, once you can sit down and finally realize that, then you can go ahead and speculate all you like. But until you accept the fact that it happened, there's no point in going before then.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's possible for there to be a before the universe, because without time, there is no concept of it.
Exactly. And without the space to work within, there's no reason to do it either. Because there's, even if you had time and matter, but you have no space, you still have nothing to work with. You don't know what's going on. And so, even if you can do that with every individual little thing, but the big one is, like you said, time. You can't speculate what happened before time, because you are leaving the realm of what we can understand and what we are going to know.
Yeah.
And so and that's one of the things that I want to show with the my Science for the Newly Deconverted series, is that sometimes I don't know is an okay answer. And sometimes it's the most honest. You can sit there and say, oh, well, we have ideas. I mean, hell, Lawrence Krauss and a bunch of other people believe in the multiverse. They believe that is a valid hypothesis. But they also understand that it's just a hypothesis right now.
Yeah.
That there is some science behind this, and that it is a hypothesis, but they understand that that's what they personally subscribe to. Now, they could be wrong too, and that's okay. But you have to realize that we don't know is a absolutely okay answer. And that's what I want to get through to people who just deconvert out of their religion. Even if they don't become atheist or agnostic, if they just go out of their religion but want to know science about the world that they live in, it's so that's the biggest thing that I want them to know, is that saying I don't know is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't possibly agree more with that. I mean, apparently, my nephew's 9 years old. Apparently, he's never heard this before I said it to him. But I actually told him it's okay to say, I don't know, if you don't know something. He was just dumbstruck. Apparently, yet nobody had ever said that to him before.
And
but
it's sad.
Yeah, it's a perfectly acceptable answer. I don't know. Well, why don't you know? I didn't study a thing.
Yeah.
Not
only, or because I sit there and there's been several times I've been in discussions with theists when they sit there and say, well, what happened here? Or what happened here? Is like, we don't know. And that is and I explain to them. I say, not knowing is a valid, conclusion.
Yeah.
That is a valid statement, because we don't always have to know the answers to everything in life.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but no single book is ever going to tell us everything we need to know about life.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say, you can't just interject, I have a book, like Ken Ham likes to do.
Yeah.
Your book actually only creates more questions.
Yeah.
you know?
And which is and that single book is one of the reasons why in my series I'm also going to do planetary formation, because that book says that God created the planets pretty much. Um, well, of course, back then they didn't realize that some of the stars that they were looking at were planets as well. But um, I'm going to explain how planets forming is a natural occurring phenomenon. That this is not something that requires uh, a deity to do. So that way, because that book, makes it sound like God did it all. So there you go. And it's just, uh, that book not only causes more questions, but causes more problems.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a Christian, when I had bought into it, hook, line, and sinker, I was a fucking bigot. you know, I
Uh,
was one of those people that would use the Bible to justify shit talking gay people. I mean, I don't
yeah,
now because why the
right.
fuck would I? That's just insanity. But
Well, see, with me, the thing is I guess for a Southern Baptist, I guess you could call it being liberal, because we understood that gay people existed. We understood that they were a thing. We acknowledged that they were human beings that existed. We were supposed to love them, even though, because it's one of those, hate the sin, not the sinner. But ultimately, they wanted to push the fact that if we had gay family or gay friends, they want us to push the fact that, you can love them all you like, and everything, but ultimately, no, they're going to hell.
yeah,
Because it's a way for you to feel bad and want to try to convert them. So that way, it's subconsciously, I love this friend slash family member. I need to save them so that way they don't endure eternal damnation. And so they
yeah,
continuously stress the fact that it's like, love them. They are your friends. They are your family. You can love them. But just know that they are going to burn in hell.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of that attempting to convert them can actually cause psychological damage, especially if we're talking about conversion therapy.
Oh my God.
By conversion therapy, I actually mean torture, because that's kind of what it
That's
is.
that's exactly what it is.
You know, but
I mean, especially whenever, and this is the biggest thing that really gets me, is because they want to make it seem like homosexuality is something that is unnatural and it's dirty and whatnot. It's like, you do realize that the science behind homosexuality shows that it is a natural occurring thing.
yeah, I mean there have been a couple, I think, scientific studies done, and I'm gonna have to look this up. I think I saw it on like a Discovery Channel show or something like that. And they did research, and they found that gay penguins actually adopt the children that are either
Unwanted.
not wanted, or they lost their parents.
Hmm.
So that right there could very easily be evolutionary point to homosexuality. But like I said, I'll have to look that up, and as soon as
Yeah.
I find it, I'll pin it in the comment section.
Yeah. One of the things that studies I had found was the fact that there is genetics and epigenetics at play when it comes to homosexuality. They say that, that due to epigenetics, you could have one generation of um, of people being homosexuality, and you can actually that then through genetics can be passed down to the offspring. And it was a very interesting thing. I can't remember where I found it, but it was a very interesting read because it shows that genetically homosexuality is a natural occurring thing, and it was fascinating, and so I mean, hell, and homosexuality has been happening throughout the entire history of everything. I mean, hell, one of the most biggest and baddest groups of people, known as the Spartans, who bred for war. All of their men were warriors. Also practiced the whole entire idea that women were for procreation, men were for recreation. And this is the most manly men you could think of. These are guys that would probably kill you without hesitation and really without much effort into it. I mean, hell, one of my favorite stories was some king of another nation sent a messenger out to him, out to the kings of Sparta, and in the letter it said, that if they did not surrender, that if they had to come over there, that they would kill them, rape their women, and kill their children, type of thing. And so the Spartans sent back a reply, and it was one word: if. And the king never went over to Sparta because of that one word reply: if. If you come here. So these are people who were bad motherfuckers, and they practice homosexuality. And so it's very, very interesting for people to say that this is something that you should deny when other cultures throughout history never denied it. Never once sat there and tried to pretend like this wasn't something that was going to happen.
Yeah. So I actually just put in the chat a link to an I Fucking Love Science article from, when was this posted? Of course, I don't see a date, but there was a couple of penguins a gay couple penguins who adopted a neglected chick, and raised it at a zoo. So that would be one potential evidence, but I really don't remember where I saw the original thing.
Okay. There you go. There's still a link there.
Yeah. But we have actually been going a little longer than an hour. So I think that'd be a pretty good place to cut it off. I mean, we hit on every topic we needed to. Is there anything you wanted to say before I cut you loose?
Oh, yeah. I'm also doing a thing with Cirrus, Kate, or also known as Bionic Dance, in the Atheist Rationale, where we are all digging into Steven Anderson and his ilk.
That guy.
Yes. Cirrus had already made a couple videos, and so has Bionic Dance, and I'm in the process of getting all my stuff that I need to gather to do my first video on it. I was going to do it before the wedding and everything, but time kind of just crept up on me. And I was like, oh, well, hi, wedding. So never got around to doing it then, but now I'm going to try to focus on that and also get that done as well.
Right on, man.
Yeah, so
Well,
we are taking we're going after the what is known as the NIFB, which is the new like
Independent Fundamental Baptists.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fun.
And my first video that I will be doing is on the actually the IFB, because well, part of the IFB, the history of the IFB, and how the new IFB is different from the old IFB, if it is at all different.
Right on, man. Sounds like something to look forward to. And you guys will be able to look forward to that yourselves, because I have linked Frustrated's YouTube channel and his Twitter in the description box down below. So if for some crazy reason you haven't yet, go to both of those, click subscribe or follow on them, and yeah, just follow the dude. He's good. I've seen a bunch of his videos prior to the wedding. Congratulations once again on that, man. You know,
Thank
he
you.
makes some really good content, so check it out. But yeah, that will do it for this one. Thank you for stopping by, Frustrated. I appreciate it, and thank you everyone else for watching.
Always, bud.
Oh yeah. I'll see everybody later.